My name is Vivek Saraugi, and I'm a retired British Merchant Navy officer. I joined the British Merchant Navy in 1971 as a third officer. The company I then joined, rather they interviewed me first, was a company called Ellerman City Liners. They were a blue chip company. They no longer exist. They've just vanished. And I was the first Indian officer they had taken. So I was the test case. So they told me then they had Indian crew, but not officers. There was a shortage of officers. Industry was at its peak. And I had already served my time in an Indian company as a cadet, got my qualifications. I'd done part of the qualification. There was still a very small part to do when I was interviewed, so they knew that I'll have everything. So I was the first Indian officer they had taken on. And they told me that everything will be exactly the same. At that time, few of the British companies used to take Indian officers, but there used to be a wage difference.
Right. Okay.
So when the interview was over, the Captain Taylor, who was the chief personnel man, superintendent, he asked me, he said, "Vivek, is there anything you want to ask us?" I said, "Yes, it's just one thing. Will my wage be exactly the same as the British officers?" And he said, "Yes, of course, everything will be exactly the same." Even when I was in the Indian company, the ethos of work was based on the British system of working.
Yes.
It's not a bad system as far as I know, because we never mistreated anybody. In fact, we held up the flag very well. So when I first came to Northern Ireland, that was back in 1971, and that also happened purely by chance, that the first captain I sailed with came from here. And when the voyage was over, the company were going to send me to another ship, which they did, but he sort of said, "Look, this young man needs a break." And they said, "But he doesn't need a holiday or something in a person." Things were very short in those days for officer work. But he stood my ground. I didn't even know he was standing for me, to be quite honest with you. So I came to his house in Finnicky for a week, 10 days holiday.
Okay.
Now, holiday doesn't mean anything to me in those days, because if you go into somebody's house, it's something different, and that's it. That's how I first saw Belfast.
Okay.
I never heard of Belfast before. In fact, people told me Belfast. I said, "Why did you come here?" I said, "Well, I never heard of Belfast, never heard of Northern Ireland." So these things don't really mean anything to me at that time. In that age, you only had your career and having basically a merchant navy life, which is hard-working, straightforward, very simple life. You get fed, you get looked after, you get paid, all in that order. And that comes through because of my training as a cadet, when you're told at every stage what to do, how to behave, in that order, all along.
So what age were you whenever you came
I was
in 71?
basically 21, 22.
Okay. And obviously the 70s was a bit of a
Yes,
time
the trouble.
in Northern Ireland.
Trouble was, and a little later on I met my first wife also. Funny enough, I met my first wife in India first, although she's from Northern Ireland. What happened then was that the troubles were at their peak, basically. But it didn't affect me in any way, in a sense that I only came here for my leave.
Yeah.
And then I was away from Northern Ireland. The ships don't come in. You don't join a ship. There's no Navy base or something like that. You get a telegram in those days. You're joining the ship in Birkenhead or Middlesbrough or wherever. And you go there and you join a ship and you sail out. And you know you're on wages 24/7. So life was quite straightforward. And I gave my wife, in that time I wasn't married to her, but I was living with her. She got the money, so things just ticked over. So that way the troubles didn't affect me. Although you had the searches, this, that and everything like that. There was one incident, we were coming to Belfast, we were on a bus, and suddenly a few boys got on and they told everybody to get off the bus. And the bus driver said, "Everybody off." Now, I later on told the bus driver, I said, "For God's sake, we could have flattened these boys, because I'm a sailor myself. I said, we could have just hit the first boy and the other way around. He said, yeah, we could have done that, but we don't know if somebody's hiding in the bushes and they shoot at us or whatever. It's not worth the trouble. So those kind of things just went on, but that didn't affect me in any way because I never understood that Irish dimension of the trouble. I was perhaps too young, too naive, didn't understand the complexity of it. And that went on for a long time. I did my master's ticket here, so I was here for 9 months. I was in Jordanstown studying. That was my final exam. So I could become captain basically. Trouble again at the highest. But the college life was perfect. There was no trouble, nothing. Lectures were very good. The Department of Marine Industry here were very, very good. Exceptionally good, I should say. But that's what you would expect from the merchant navy perspective. You wouldn't expect it anything less. So my experience right through Northern Ireland that way was very good because everything was laid on. My daughters went to primary school, this, that and all. There was no questions asked. It was just all open. Everything was open. So I always tell, Northern Ireland is the best place to live in for what it is. And when I look at the trouble, because of my travels, and I've travelled all over the world, we've got a fantastic deal going here. Don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
I know it sounds different to you, but that's my perspective.
Okay.
I was born in a very small village town, like place called Purulia, which is about 200 miles west of Calcutta. It's a totally nondescript town. If you look into the map of India, you have to literally expand it to find Purulia. I'll show it to you on the Google. My sister married a merchant navy man, Captain Gopinandan Kelkar. Very fine man. He's still alive. He's in his mid-80s. He was here for about 3 weeks, 6-7 weeks ago. So he was in the merchant navy. So he's 84 now. I'm 65. So say 20 years older than me, 19 years older than me. And he knew that I was not academically that brilliant and I was just in a bit of a wayward situation. So he suggested to my sister that we will send Vivek out to sea.
Okay.
So in a sense, I was not given a choice.
Right, okay.
I was just told you're going out to sea as a cadet.
Yeah.
Which was a very good job to be had.
Yeah.
Because people were literally killing one another to get to that.
Obviously you came to Northern Ireland, but what was your very first thoughts of it? You said that you didn't know much about here, you didn't even know where it was. So things like the weather.
No, those things don't bother. Because once you're out at sea, weather does no
You've been blown about enough.
Weather means nothing.
Okay.
I mean, this is something again I tell a lot of the locals. I say, look, don't complain about the weather. Because I've been in far worse winter weather than you can imagine.
Yeah.
I've been in far worse hotter weather than you can imagine. So I said, this is very good.
So what did you think then whenever you first obviously set foot? Did you think it was a beautiful country?
Yeah. It was a beautiful country in a sense that I came from India. So things are quite rural there. Things are much more modern here. Although the first house I stayed in Stranmillis Road, would you believe, they had an outside toilet.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting.
It had an outside toilet. So in that sense, I came from a family where the toilet was inside.
Yes.
Okay, in Purulia it wasn't a flushing toilet, but at least the toilet was inside. So there was something that you had to sort of, take it. I came from a house where there was abundance of food. When I say abundance of food, there was very good food or normal clothes. There weren't the televisions and things like that, but that you never missed it. Telephone was a luxury. We didn't have a telephone. So those things were not there, but that was quite accepted. But when you come to Northern Ireland, all of a sudden, central heating, this, that, and everything. There's a television, there's a black and white television, radio rental television. So things were settled that way. And my mother told me, she asked me lots of questions because I'm the youngest, so she could perhaps talk to me much. And I was very close to her also. And I remember once she's asking me, in 1989, just before she died, I'd gone to see her. And she said to me, son, is it true that you have many varieties of bread in the shops. I said to her, yeah, Mum, you're right. I said, there could be maybe 20 varieties of bread in the shop. Including soda faws and potato bread and scones or whatever. I said, yeah. And she said, you're very lucky to be living in a country like that. and I remember those things.
Yeah.
And yet she fed me very well. Yeah. In fact, I still cook a dish that my mum used to make me, and it's a rice pudding. It wasn't as rich a life as we see it today. That richness back in 1975, mid-70s, I say, how many restaurants were there in Belfast? The dish in those days was steak, prawn cocktail, steak, followed by apple pie and custard.
That was your treat.
That was the main menu. Garlic was an oddity in the shops.
Yeah.
No, that's a fact.
Yeah.
So I said to them, this euphoria of the wealth that we talk about today is a very recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
40 years ago it wasn't the case. When I was in Jordanstown, we were Irish stew, one fella used to bring it home from it. It was the best meal to be had. It was frozen up, it lasted just 2 nights.